Okay, this video is going to be part 2 of our 11.1 notes. This is going to cover area of triangles. We're also going to be doing perimeter. The area of a triangle is 1/2 the product of the base and the corresponding height. Like a parallelogram, the base can be written as any side, and the height is the length of an altitude drawn to that base. So that altitude, we need to remember, is perpendicular. It goes from the vertex straight perpendicular to the opposite side. So as we see in here, another way of seeing this formula would be, because we're taking half of the base times height, so you have these two different methods. But base right here and the height from a vertex perpendicular with that base. So on these problems, we are going to have a lot of work to show, so you're going to want to make sure you write small or get a separate sheet of paper. We will be finding perimeter and area, and we'll be rounding to the nearest tenth when necessary. And we will be writing our units in. So on number 1, we're going to have some work right here, some work right here, and then above P, we're going to have perimeter work. Above A, we're going to have the area work. Now, to find the perimeter, what we need to do is, we see here, we're looking at, first of all, we need to see where our triangle is. It is the shaded region right here, okay, the shaded area. So we know that the height right here, we don't have this height and we don't have the third side. We're missing 2 of the 3 sides. We don't have a 45, 45, 90 or 30, 60, 90. We cannot use trigonometry. So what we need to do is we need to use Pythagorean theorem. We're going to have to do it twice. The first thing we'll find is the height. We can, because this other triangle they drew has 2 of the 3 sides. So we're going to go ahead and take this and use Pythagorean theorem to figure out what our height is. So we have our height squared plus, see how small I'm writing, plus the other leg, 3 squared, equals the hypotenuse of 5 squared. Some of you already know this is a 3, 4, 5 triple. So if you know that, you can go ahead and label your height as 4. If we did not, that's fine. We have our steps. We're going to square our 2 numbers. For this problem, looking for the height, looking for a leg, we need to subtract. Didn't leave room for that one, sorry. We need to subtract. So we're going to end up with h squared equals 16. Then our last step in Pythagorean theorem, take the square root. It cancels the exponent, and your height ends up 4. Okay, so I got the height equals 4 right there. Now, we can take the shaded triangle, the one we're trying to find the area of, and we can use Pythagorean theorem again so that we can find that hypotenuse. Our altitude is 90 degrees on each side. So, taking this triangle, come over here, gotta write a little bit smaller here, we have our 2 legs, we're missing the hypotenuse. So A and B will be 4 and 15, so we have 4 squared plus 15 squared equals the missing hypotenuse squared. Square the numbers. We will add the 2 numbers. And then last step, square root, rounding to the nearest tenth as they told us, it ends up being 15.5. So in the shaded region, for our perimeter, we just need to add the 3 sides together. We have the 15.5 we found, plus the 15, plus the 4. We add all of these together to get 34.5 centimeters. For area, base times height divided by 2. We have base, it does not include this 3, it's only this 15, times the height that we found, that was 4, all divided by 2. And as a little trick, when you're multiplying 2 numbers in the numerator, you can, I'm going to show you this one, I won't do it too much though, you can go ahead and divide this out. So instead of 15 times 4 divided by 2, we have 15 times 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we just multiply 15 times 2. That confuses you, just type in 15 times 4, divide by 2. We end up with 30 centimeters squared. It's a lot of work. Whew. All right, next. For number 2, we cannot find the perimeter because we're missing a side again. So again, Pythagorean theorem, we're going to go ahead and grab this triangle, this right triangle, because the triangle that's shaded, what we're trying to find the area and perimeter, is not a right triangle. You cannot use Pythagorean theorem with the 34 and 22. So if we go over here with the height and this little 8 they gave us, we'll go ahead and we'll take our 2 legs, 8 squared plus 16 squared, all equal to the hypotenuse c squared. We've done this several times now. Square the 2 numbers. Add the 2 numbers. Last step in Pythagorean theorem is always to take that square root. Round to the nearest tenth is approximately 17.9. So now to find the perimeter, add all 3 sides up together. I'm going to write a little bit differently since I have room. 17.9 that we found, plus the 34, plus the 22. We get 73.9 feet. Area, base times height, divided by 2. Base, now we're only looking at the shaded region here, 22, times, be careful, height is always perpendicular. So this one, the altitude or height is outside the triangle. We're using 16 for the height. Okay, we can go ahead and divide out the 16 by 2, and then we have 22 times 8, or we just type in this 22 times 16 divided by 2. Either way, we wind up with 176 feet squared. All right, next. We cannot find the perimeter. Seems to be kind of what's going on here because we don't have our sides. What we do know, though, is that we have an isosceles triangle. So we can pull one of the 2 right triangles that this altitude splits in half to 2 congruent triangles. We can pull this to the side to find that side length. It's not really the best triangle there. Yeah, a little better. Now the whole length over here is 24. What we need to see is once we split this triangle up, we're going to split it into 12 each. So the base of this smaller triangle we're using Pythagorean theorem for is 12. The height remains as 28. We will be looking for C. So the 12 and the 28 will be A and B. So we have 12 squared plus 28 squared equals C squared. Okay. Same thing as we've been doing. Square the 2 numbers. In this case, looking for the hypotenuse, we want to add them to 928. And the last step for Pythagorean theorem. Run to the nearest tenth, we have approximately 30.5. Here's 30.5 over here, and because they are congruent, 30.5 over here. All right, perimeter. Let's add them all together. We have the 30.2 of the 30.5s. You can actually do 2 times 30.5 if you want. And we're going to add that with the 24. Adding all these together, we find our perimeter is 85 meters. All right, area. Let's find our base and height and plug this in. Going back to the original triangle we started off with, the base is 24. The height is perpendicular, the altitude, which was 28. Plug this into the calculator. We wind up with 336 meters. Area is squared. All right, let's buckle down for this next one. The base of a triangle is 4 times its height. If the area of the triangle is 242 square millimeters, find the base and the height. All right, let's start off with this first thing. The base of a triangle is 4 times its height. What that means is little b is 4 times h. Base is 4 times the height. Now with the area, this is our A, we have 242. Looking at our area formula of base times height divided by 2, we're going to plug in the 242 for area. For B, we're going to plug in 4H, okay, because that 4H, that's what B is. We're going to go, okay, we have 4H, and then we're going to continue with H, okay, B is 4H now, times the height, over 2. So when we solve for this, there are a couple different ways you can approach this. You can set up as a proportion, cross multiply if you'd like to. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and cancel. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and do a proportion. Change this up from my answer key here. When we cross multiply here, we're just going to wind up with 4HH. What I need you guys to see here, this is H times H. This is going to become H squared. So all in all, this is going to wind up being 4H squared equals. We multiply the other direction, we're going to wind up with 484. We want to get rid of the 4 coefficient before we take care of the exponent. So we divide both sides by 4. We're going to have, let's move it over here, the height squared is equal to 141. We need to take that square root so we can figure out what the height is. It's a very complex problem. H is going to end up being, once we make that correction, because I was correct the first time, right, it was 121. 121 is a perfect square, so your height's going to end up being 11. Now, this is our height, so we can fill that in right here as millimeters, okay, 11 millimeters. The thing is that the base, we have to go back to this formula. The base was 4 times the height. So the base is 4 times that 11 millimeters, giving us 44 millimeters. Okay, please go back and rewind if you need to. All right, very, very complex problem there. The good news is this last problem is not as difficult, okay? Here we're going to have that the area of this triangle is 357 inches squared. All we're doing is finding the height, and they have right here an X for us, okay? So if we have the area with our formula of base times height divided by 2, A is going to be replaced with 357. We have our base of 34, and that will be times our height of X all over 2. When we start solving this, and our students really like the proportions, we set this up for proportion setup, making 357 into a fraction, and then we can do our cross multiplying here. We wind up with 34x equals, we take 357 and multiply it by 2, we're going to get 714. Now all we have to do, let's get rid of the 34 in front of the x. Divide both sides by 34. X is going to wind up being 21. And we do have units of inches. Okay? Please go back and look at anything that we need to on this, especially number 4. And that concludes the area of triangles.